There are probably a million techniques for creating a painting, and all I can show you in this exercise is a handful of them. So whatever I show you, there are other ways to do it, and I'm not here to tell you how to paint. I'm just showing you a set of possibilities for ending up with a piece of final artwork. Once you start taking these brushes and incorporating them into your painting, each one of you is going to go off into a different direction and hopefully end up with very different results. That's the idea behind painting, is to express yourself, and that's what we want to do here. But what I'm going to do to finish this up is show you a couple techniques that I employ sometimes that gives an interesting look to the work. And the next element I'm going to apply here is I'm going to put just a curving beach into here. So I'm going to create another layer. Right now this layer is our background. And if I was taking more time, I would probably name these layers so I could just look at them and know what they are. But for our purposes, just knowing what is on which layer is good enough. So for our fourth layer, I'm going to start to add my beach sand. And so I will grab a color here. I'm going to reduce the size of my brush. So let's go in and set it up so I can use my touch ring. And we'll go in here and just assume there's a kind of a curved beach coming into the foreground. I'm not going to worry too much about the edge. I might do a little finalizing work on how the edge of this whole image looks. And I'm definitely going here for a very kind of expressive quality in the work. I'm not trying to be precise. I like little mistakes. I want the whole image to have that kind of loose quality to it. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I've created the basic shape for this beach that curves. I can now take that layer and lock its transparency. And by doing so, just take a temporary color here, I can paint in this now, and I'm only going to paint within that area. So effectively, this area is masked, and it now allows me to play with atmospheric depth so that it changes color as it goes towards the background. So for that, I might get a lighter color. I'll enlarge my brush stroke a little bit here, and this is where I'm just going to apply, not probably 100%, but just kind of give some change and transition so that as it goes back, it gets lighter and loses some saturation. Okay. Next, we're going to put a palm tree kind of arcing over our scene. And once again, I'm going to do the same technique using the transparency lock, but this is where I want to take advantage of the pointed, round, floppy, opaque brush. This has a lot of nice character in it. And at this point, because I know I'm literally going to be using this as a mask, I don't have to be concerned with color. So I'm actually going to go so far as to use black on a new layer and paint with it, knowing that I can go in here and change it. So my idea is something like this. Okay, that's good enough. And we'll lock that off. And now once again, I can go in here with some of my color, and we'll go back to my short opaque. And now I can go in here and paint into this. And I can try different things out because I can keep adding different colorations in here. I might want something a little darker on the shadow edge, something a little lighter on the sunlit edge. And it seems like palm trees have somewhat of a skin on them. So let's once again go back to the floppy opaque here, and we'll just grab color. And so we're just putting some texture into here. The other thing I can do is, this was another thing we looked at earlier. I have set the rear button on my Wacom pen to use the number 0. And when I click it once, that changes the wet value to 100%. When I click it in rapid succession twice, it goes back to 0. This gives me a brush that can alternate between being a opaque brush and a fully smearing brush. So now I can go in here and just kind of mix this up a little bit. I just want to have some character within these strokes. So there's just interesting texture. The next thing is going to be the actual palms on this tree. So we're going to do another layer, and this might be another time to save your image. Just whenever you think about saving, I'd say do it. Okay, so now I've got my layer set here for painting my fronds, and I'm going to grab some green, and I want to switch from being wet, so I'm going to do a double click here real quick. Or you could press the 0 button twice if you don't have your barrel set up that way. And now I'm going to go in here and do a little frond painting. And again, I don't have to be 100% concerned with exactly how these look at the moment in terms of their color, because I can mask this off. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So we'll mask this off. And maybe at this point, I'm going to grab the short opaque. And you can see here now, see how I can really add a lot of interesting detail within this area, just based on the strokes that are going into it. And one thing we may do here is I'm just going to get a darker green. In fact, I'm going to use my Express key so I can call up my HUD color picker here. I'm just going to get a darker green. And again, I'm doing this very light so that I'm putting in some texture and darker areas, but I'm not completely overriding it. Okay, one thing I'm going to do here real quick is I see how I let the top of the tree show through. So I can pick this up and move it, which is a nice thing. In fact, I can grab both of these elements in the layer list and just play with the positioning. I might want this a little more organized in the center. And the last thing I want to do now is just to add a little bit of separation between the background and the palm fronds is I'm going to create a new layer, which is beneath both of the base of the tree and the fronds. And I'm going to put some clouds in the sky. So once again, I'm going to use my floppy opaque here, grab some white, just to help pop that foreground a bit. Oh, and while we're here, let's use this same layer to put a little bit of white caps. So the idea here is to just be a very loose, free kind of sketch. So this demonstrates just a combination of all the things that we've learned in the different chapters and putting it together into a real-world style project. This kind of look, I can see it fitting maybe in a children's book. The other thing I might want to do here at this point is I can go in and turn off my layer. So now we don't have that distraction. We'll just grab all of this and center it. And there's our finished art. So hopefully you've seen through this how all of these various techniques can come together so that you can end up with a very nice, loose, and carefree style of painting. But certainly you're the master of your own brushes and you'll decide exactly what kind of look you want when you put all this together.